All right, awesome. Thank you for having me. I did put a Colorado Rockies backdrop, but I am from Austin, Texas. I am Mark Spitzer. Thank you so much for inviting me today. Um, I'm a leadership coach and OKR coach. I'm certified with ICF. I'm certified as a guide coach with Scrum Alliance. I've been in kind of the Agile space for the last 10 years full time. Pretty well-rounded. I have a lot of experience, and I'm excited to talk to you about two of my favorite topics, leadership and OKRs. So let me share my screen. And thumbs up if you can see it. There's only two of y'all. Okay, perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly what I needed. So today's talk is, catalyzing leadership growth with OKRs, because I find there's a great opportunity, and so many people are doing OKRs today. So let's just lead off with what are OKRs. I love this definition. OKRs are dreams with deadlines. You want to put a little more words to it. It's a powerful goal setting system used to set ambitious goals, right? Not just any goals, not just any metrics, but definitely with measurable results. And so again, like anybody could respond to this in chat or y'all online, but like who's using OKRs today? Anybody actively using them? Kinda, sorta, yeah. In New Zealand? About sheep? No, just kidding. There we go, gotta laugh. So here's one example, okay? It's a simple example, but it's basically, imagine you have an app or a website or something where people can purchase things, okay? And you're the product manager of that website. And so people, like, you're getting feedback from your customers, and the feedback is, it's really hard to pay on your site. You might even be using analytics. Analytics are telling you that people are dropping off halfway through paying for things. You're like, what is going on? And so you figured out, look, the most important thing to do with our product or for our product this next quarter is going to be to make digital payments more convenient. So you're going to rally around this thing, right? This is your objective. Everybody's going to rally around this. So this objective is short, it's clear, it's memorable. You don't want to put a lot of words. You don't want to write War and Peace, but there it is, something for people to rally around. And we do want to know, well, how would we know these digital payments are more convenient? So we're going to put down a couple measures, right? Typically with an OKR, you have between like 2 and 5 key results. You don't want to have too many, but often you put some leading indicators to kind of help with the frequent measurements. In this case, we say, hey, look, digital payments are going to be more convenient. Our customers are going to be happy if we can reduce the time it takes to complete a payment by 80%, big drop. And for some people, let's not have them worry about paying. Let's just have it happen each month or whatever the subscription period is. So we're just going to double the number of auto pay enrollments. If we do that, some people don't even have to worry about this. So pretty clear, rallying cry for the group. And, it's just an example, but examples kind of vary in different places. But what's important with OKRs is that you understand and get the benefits out of them. And so the benefits of OKRs, I've distilled it down to the 3, depending upon what you read. If you look at Measure What Matters, I think he has superpowers, and I forget if there's 3 or 5, and they're pretty good. It's good stuff. I mean, all the material, even if they're different, I think they're all useful. For me, I wanted to distill the benefits down to 3 things. The first thing, and this is pretty common with benefits of OKRs, I think everybody has this, it gives you focus. What matters most, right? It allows you to make an impact, and it conveys the impact you're going to make. Right? It needs to be something that matters enough to spend time and energy on, and to not do other things, say no to those other things. The third thing is something I added that I thought was really needed to be on top of the rest, because what happens for a lot of folks is when they start doing OKRs, there's no expectation that you're going to get measurements right away. And some of them may even wait to get measurements until after the OKR cycle is done. So if you have a quarterly goal, they might wait till after the quarter. That's not very useful. You want to use these for decision making. So you want to get insights out of them. And so a few benefits you really want to get. But in order to get these benefits, it requires change. I mean, look, OKRs require change. Agile requires change. XP requires change. DevOps requires change. everything requires change, right? So we're constantly going through change. When it comes to OKRs, you don't usually just stop what you're doing, right? And just start creating a goal and then figure out what you're going to do and plan around it. Often you have things you're committed to. And so, generally you're going to start with the work and kind of reverse engineer into it, but that needs to be a short-term condition. And you want your metrics not to just convey the importance of the team and make you look good, but to actually convey the impact of the work that the stakeholders and customers can really appreciate, right? And setting ambitious goals, we said it's a powerful goal-setting framework for setting ambitious goals. They're not going to be set unless you have a safe space to do it. And frequent measures don't happen unless you plan and execute a particular way, right? And you're not going to be successful with your goals if everybody's pulling in different directions and you depend on other people and they're not there to help you. So you need full commitment. And if you really want to make a big impact, this needs to be support. The OKRs need to support vision and strategy. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen to be successful. And when we talk about change, the important thing, this is true with Agile, it's true with OKRs as well, is that leadership must change. Because it's a common belief is when we bring in something new, that something new is just a process we need to follow. And if we follow this as a clear recipe, then magically we'll have benefits. And you will have some for sure. You'll have pockets of benefits, but to really, really be successful, leadership must change. So we talked about OKRs a little bit. Let's hit what is a leader, right? So a few comments on leadership. So take a second and read this. How does that land for you as a leadership definition? Yeah, a little head nodding. Okay. Yeah, so it doesn't say anything about title. So it could be somebody that, influences, but, in general, you should have some influence, some scope, something big you're working on, and some people that that you can make better in some way or help them kind of make themselves better. But the funny thing is, while this might be an aspirational definition of leader, most people don't start there, right? Most people advance, they get more responsibility because they were really good at something. They were really skilled at something, whatever that something was. And so you got skilled doing things a certain way, right? And now you're given more responsibility and you're working kind of in a new way, right? You have new things you're supposed to be good at. So what happens is you move into this position and you have a tendency to rely on what got you to that position in the first place, right? Whatever's familiar. But you do have to adapt. And so I like to consider that and think, yeah, it's an ambitious climb for sure, right? A lot of psychological safety is needed to start this climb. I found 3 leadership growth opportunities. Certainly there are more, but for me, these are the 3 key ones that are available to leaders when they're rolling out OKRs in their organization, in their company. And the 3 are shifting from tactics to strategy, increasing engagement in your organization, right? Everyone measures engagement every year. I don't know how, at your organization, do they measure it twice a year? Do they measure it quarterly? Do they measure it 3 times? What's true for y'all? Quarterly, hopefully quarterly. Okay. People measure it because it's important to them, because they want to retain people, because they want people to want to come into work. They want them to do a great job. So we'll hit more on that. The last piece, while it's going to sound kind of boring, is super important. And it's actually fairly detailed how you do it, which is to gain alignment with your peers and direct reports. Real alignment, not just saying you're going to do something, but actual commitment, right? Without talking in the hallway with other people about how it's not really that important to you or kind of pretending to support something. Real alignment. So let's hit the first one. Shifting from tactics to strategy in OKR setting. So we said somebody, maybe they're a new leader, or maybe they just really have latched on to what they were good at, right? Leaders often, they're they were subject matter experts in something, maybe they're still subject matter experts on something, and they really liked that thing, they had a passion for that thing, whatever that thing was. And so it's easy to kind of come into your new position and still focus on tactics, right? The details of the job, when is this going to be done? How is that work going? Right? A number of things like that. And if your focus is on tactics, your OKRs are going to look something like this. So this is a modification of a real OKR to protect the innocent. And this one is a technical one that talks about integrating a broadcast API into program offers. The objective itself is fine. It's fine. It's not super like inspirational, but it's succinct and it's clear. What happens though is the key results are all about the work. So broadcast integration enabled in program view. So what, right? If you do that, how do you know you're successful? And then the other one says, enable this integration for tracking customer deal actions. Well, what happens if you can track them? What do you hope? What do you hope to do better? What's that information going to help you do? Right? Implement metrics for tracking the success. Which metrics? How many metrics? How often should you get this data? What is success of these program insights and leads? All right, so a lot of stuff's missing here. And it's when leaders are focused on tactics, they don't really expect it either. And so you want to start making this shift, right? So most people, I don't know how many folks have seen this, but this is the leadership agility model. There's a book out on this and there's classes and whatnot. It's a model by Bill Joyner. I actually think this is Brad Swanson's graphic, even though I didn't put it. I know Brad's local to your area. I don't know if anybody knows Brad, but I love Brad too. I've been paddleboarding with Brad out in San Diego way back in the day, and co-taught with him and stuff like that. So, but basically this model, there's more levels to this, but models are nice because they give you kind of a frame of reference. They show you where you might be. They give you ways to assess yourself, and then you can kind of look forward. Hey, how could I improve myself? What's next? And so this only captures 3 models, the 3 most common, but most leaders fall into this expert category, right? 55% was what was used. But the best OKRs support strategy, right? So if you have a strategy in place, the OKRs are there to keep score. So we use all these words: engagement, alignment, strategy. What do they all mean? Right? They might mean different things to each of us. So here's a few that I borrowed from different places. See what you think of these. Strategy is an intent rather than a plan. Like what are we wanting to get done? It's an approach to achieve an outcome, maybe a hypothesis to test. I'll reuse that one in a second. There was this great article by Jeff Gothelf. I aspire to be like Jeff, because Jeff was writing them basically weekly, right? With these little micro blogs. And he had this one on OKRs and strategy, and I loved it. He borrowed from another guy that talked about strategy, very long article. But he talked about strategy answering 2 questions: where will you play and how will you win? Right? And then he bolted on to the top of that, OKRs are how you keep score to know if you're winning or not. Right? And so if you define your strategy by answering these questions, OKRs are now how you keep score. Right? So you can kind of test your strategy, right? Hypotheses you can test and see how that's going. It's cool stuff. So what I find is as OKRs get rolled out, there is a tendency to cascade. So cascading, for me, what it means is one level will say what their OKRs are, maybe the C level or someone else. And the next level will kind of wait for those to come down and they'll figure out what they are. Then there's usually kind of a little bit of OKR theater that happens here, where they already knew they wanted to go do some stuff. So they're going to now tie it up to certain things to make it look like they're doing the things that they said that they wanted up at the top. But it's kind of this wait and drill down mode. And what's the opportunity that's being missed when people do this is they're not taking ownership necessarily of their part of the strategy. So I assert that strategy happens at multiple levels, and it needs to happen at multiple levels, right? And it should look a little more like this. The strategy should be cohesive, right? If the one at the top and the one at the bottom are just like butting heads with each other, let's have a conversation about why. Like not everyone needs to necessarily line up. There can be exceptions, but if they all go in different directions, then you're not going to head where the people at the top want to go. So certainly you should be talking with each other. But depending upon your scope, depending upon your time horizon, right? If I own a product, and my last client, I loved that they did this, and I hope that more people do this, but they had product owners, but they didn't call them product owners because that's a Scrum role name. They actually they changed the title to product managers because that's the job they were expected to do, was to be product managers, and it's frankly a more marketable job, right? And they still play the same role in Scrum, so there's nothing wrong with that. But imagine a product manager or product owner in this case that owns a product. Shouldn't they have some kind of strategy, some kind of roadmap, some kind of vision of where the product's going to go? Whether the product's old, whether the product's new, they still have customers. They still need to make those customers happy. And you want them doing this all the time, right? And the same thing at the top. You want the people that are leading the company. And it really should happen at every single level. Everybody should have some kind of notion and idea, but be open to influence by each other. And so if you can think this way and not just cascade, if you can kind of lift that constraint, you can really start to take the same OKR that we had here and take the key results and kind of fan them out into options, right? So these options could be backlog items. They could be big backlog items like epics, themes, they could be whatever features. They could be smaller ones like stories. It just depends kind of where the OKR lives and where where the solutions live, right? But what we want are different things that we think could move the needle on the key results. It's not that we want to do everything, but we definitely want more than one idea, because if this idea doesn't work, we're kind of stuck. So then we get started with this stuff, right? So imagine a quarterly cycle, and one or more teams are working towards this quarterly cycle. There's a lot going on the screen, so let me orient you. The top half of the screen is all about the first key result, 80% reduction in time to complete payment. The bottom half is all about the second key result, the double the number of accounts enrolled in autopay. And the left side is basically the beginning of the OKR cycle, and the right side is the end of the OKR cycle. So I'm using this in two ways. I'm going to use the left to show the starting point, which is 100 enrollees trying to get to 200. And the 5 minutes that it takes to complete a payment today, trying to get down to 1 minute. You with me so far? Okay, just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. Thank you for nodding your head. That's hilarious. The other thing that's happening is today we're about 40% done with the quarterly cycle, okay? 40% done with the quarterly cycle. So how are we feeling? We have dropped time from 5 minutes to 2.5 minutes, and we're less than halfway done with the cycle. Are we feeling good? Thumbs up. Sideways, I don't know. And down, not great. How are you feeling? Yeah, thumbs up, okay. What about the other one? We have gotten 25 enrollees, and we're not quite halfway done with the timeline, but we've got another 75 to get. Same thumb measure. Up, positive, down, negative, sideways, not sure. Is that a sideways? Yeah, okay. So thing about this is I like to use more than one piece of data. So even if the measurement isn't coming, let's imagine one or more product teams that are measuring this each sprint. And maybe they can't get the enrollee number. The enrollee number didn't move the sprint, but maybe the confidence did. So maybe this group has said, we've only gotten 25 enrollees, but we realize what's going to allow us to get the rest. So we've been learning, because we've been learning, we've figured out the magic to this. But we have some bad news. We're only 30% confident that we can get this down to 1 minute, because we've squeezed a lot out of this already. And we don't think we can get all the way down to 1 minute. We think that's pretty ambitious, right? So there's some information here that you want to be able to test over time, right, with your strategy. And the magic news here for a leader is, anyone seen this? This is the conscious leadership. They have a beautiful video. I want to say it's 10 minutes. I could be wrong. If it is more, it's not much more. It's a 10-minute video, something like that. It's called Locate Yourself. and it's by the Conscious Leadership Group. And the Conscious Leadership Group, I love their model, right? I showed you the leadership agility model. This one I love too. It's a line, and you're either at any point above the line, which means you're open, curious, and committed to learning, or you're below the line, committed to being right, defensive, and closed. And all of us, including leaders, often find ourselves in positions where we're trying to be right. But that can be really stressful because you have tension, you have conflict, and it just, bad things tend to happen with relationships when you are more about the bottom. But if you're in the situation where you have options, you know the strategy, right, and you're getting regular measures and data, you're going to be more at the top, right, by default. Doesn't mean you might not slip into the bottom, but you're naturally going to go more towards the top. And if you do this, right, if people do this, you're going to get OKRs that start to look a little bit more like this, right? So you've got options, you got measures, you're kind of figuring this out, and then you're starting to shift, right, from this expert to achiever, where you'll find 35% of leaders. And the other model that I love is the universal model of leadership. So if you've heard of the leadership circle profile, it's based on the universal model of leadership. Ton of research statistics done by this. A lot of it's been influenced by a man called Robert Keegan, who's got some really great books and teaches at Harvard, I think it is. I was going to say MIT, but I think it's Harvard. What I love about this is there's actually statistical correlations. You would think I can, but I actually can't. But I'll tell you what the other thing is that you can't read. So correlations, if you know anything about statistics, 1 would be perfect. It would be an exact correlation. So 0.9 is actually strongly correlated. So strategic focus is in this achieving area, right? That's all about task work. And leaders that are good at this generally are more effective leaders, right? So the correlation is with effective leadership. And the thing the reactive tendencies are at the bottom, the creative are at the top. People often come from reactive. The one you can't read is something called protecting, which tends to be more like arrogance, and I'm forgetting some of the others right now. But let's move on. The second opportunity for leaders with OKRs is increasing engagement. And this is the thing, some things just like when you do them well, they work magic. And OKRs are one of them. So OKRs done well can infuse energy. Energy matters, right? Nothing's worse than not having energy at work, at home, wherever it happens to be. And I love this quote, right? This was from like you bring something new to people, they're like, oh, great, the latest thing. I just need to wait this out. What's this going to cause me to do now? But by the end of working with this woman, it was like, her quote to her boss was like, I hate how much I love this, right? Because it helped her. It helped her with her position with her stakeholders and take more control of her product. She was now more in the driver's seat and having better, stronger conversations with people about strategy and about measurements and all kinds of awesome things. And so how can leaders help with this? So I love this quote too. This is from 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, also by that Conscious Leadership Group. They say conscious leaders are masters at managing energy, right? And so this is creating a culture that is engaged, on purpose, clear, other things. But those are the ones that popped out to me the most, right? Engaged, purpose, and clear. That sounds awesome. What's engagement? I don't know. Engagement, an emotional state where we feel passionate, energetic, committed to our work. We want to come to work and do it. It's awesome, right? Like, have you ever had days like that or projects like that or people you've been around, you've worked on something that's like, this kicks butt. I'm super excited about it and I'm all in, right? This is what you're looking for. And this can happen. We spend a lot of our work lives there. We have the potential to do this. But one of the tricky things with OKRs is, look, like engaged on what, right? We do need to kind of come back and provide a little bit of focus. So one of the common things that happens for people is they have to decide how many OKRs they're going to have. You know, if I have multiple product teams, you know, do I have one OKR for the organization or do I have several? And what about at the team level? Do I have one per team, or what if 2 teams work on one product? Like, should they have the same one? Or what if 2 teams are working on the same thing for the same quarter? You know, but they highly depend on each other. Should they each have their own? So there's some clarity that you have to have in order to create engagement, right? If you're pulling in different directions, you're not clear on what the mission or purpose is, then you're kind of in trouble. And so there was this wonderful, wonderful product manager. She was a group, they called them group product managers, which means she had probably about, oh gosh, 11 to 13 product managers working for her, right? So maybe it's a portfolio group in your area, whatever it happens to be. She had this situation where they had just gotten reorged, and they had brought in some new people, and they were at 13 different products, and she was kind of like, they were taking on OKRs too and trying to figure out how to do this. And she kind of wondered, look, how do these products fit together? How do I make sense of this, right? If they need to have clarity in order to be engaged, what do I do? I don't even know it myself. And then how do I set goals and direction without a cohesive vision? And so she was awesome, because she would just she would say, hey, in kind of a safe space, she would say these things out loud in a safe space, and I'd say, hey, you want coaching to help you think on this? Yeah. And she got to the point of clarity. She was like, I know what to do. I'm like, awesome. But she had this other thing too she had to deal with. So think about engagement, right? The opposite of engagement, low morale. So she definitely had some morale issues on the team. She had some older products, right? And definitely that the older products weren't getting the same budgeting as some of the more interesting, fun, new products, modern products that some of the peer organizations were doing. They were actually doing sort of embedded software and tractors and other cool stuff out in the field. Their stuff, not so much. And so she wanted to handle that as well. And so what did she do? So I stole the top from Brene Brown, who I also love, right? Model, clarity, kindness, and hope. And so one of the other things you get out of OKRs, or anytime you kind of start something new, Agile could be the same, is hope. And so she brought her people together, right? All the product managers and some select other folks, and they oriented around their customers, right? Who are we serving, right? Doing this in Mural, doing this with Post-it notes, moving things around. Yeah, exactly. Clear is kind and unclear is unkind. They found overlap, right? Places they had commonality in the customers they served. They found dependencies where they needed each other. They did this themselves, right? She was there and she supported them. She wasn't disengaged. She would ask thought-provoking questions. She would provide input when input was called for, but she didn't. She wasn't overbearing in the situation. They came up with these amazing posters. Like, we actually asked them to go talk at a community practice there and tell their story, because they had these amazing posters that they came up with themselves around who they served and what the meaning and purpose of these things were. And it was really awesome. And as a leader, what she started to do was move into this catalyst space, right? And she was doing this through vision and connection. And I'll say more about kind of how that helped with OKRs if we kind of hit the next section. But for her, there was a little bit of clarity around the number of OKRs. She wasn't sure how many to have with 13 teams, right? As at her level, she needed an annual one to set some kind of direction. And she was clear on 3 kind of focus points. So she had 3, right? But for 13 teams, that was okay. Each one could tie up to 1 and not have confusion, right? There was enough to kind of represent the area. And kind of through doing this, what she was doing was relating. She was actually showing caring connection for her folks. She knew their morale was low. She cared about their input and their thoughts. She cared about them connecting with each other. She was fostering team play. Those 2 things, caring connection and foster team play, are part of what's called relating in the universal model of leadership. These 2 things, relating and achieving, are the 2 highest correlated out of all the creative competencies on the top. These are the ones that, if you're going to be an effective leader, these are the areas you need to be super good at.
Interesting.
Right?
Mark, do you mind scrolling a bit so we can see the bottom part of the pie?
Yeah, so I understood your question before, and I can't scroll. So I used artistic license and I cut it off. I shouldn't have done that, because it's the second time that somebody has said something.
Oh, okay.
It's actually, what I'm telling you is it's called protecting. So it's complying, controlling, and protecting is in the middle. So it's my fail. I was trying to be cute with it because I thought it would actually look visually more interesting. But I think I could probably still pull that off and put the protecting there. So I'll probably change that for the next group. I do appreciate you asking the question. Thank you. All right, final opportunity for leaders. gain alignment, please. Nothing is worse than sort of infighting. You know, as we get into a situation here that I'm going to play out for you, maybe something will resonate. But one of the things about alignment is it goes up and down, vertical, and then there's sort of horizontal alignment, right? So you want these things to happen. We looked at kind of the cascading before for the vertical aspect, but the horizontal aspect is just as important. I'm sure everybody's had their bouts with dependencies, done dependency mapping, and done kind of big room planning and stuff like that. And that's super important. You should do that. I like to do it at the goal level first, because we're talking not just about people's work, but about the difference you're trying to make. And that's usually easier and less fighting. So one story that's super common when you're rolling out OKRs, so I told you about the woman that was a group product manager. This is true pretty much of all the product managers we worked with. And we liked working with the product managers first because it was kind of an area we were doing with one client. And so this woman was like, hey, we're using OKRs to define product goals. And then her technology counterpart, who was sort of a director of the engineers, said, hey, I need that for my technology work too. That's awesome, right? And so they're like, I'm going to pop a technology one here, and you're going to have a product one here. Well, what's likely to happen below, right? What are the people on the team going to do? Because you've got, you know, if you've got Scrum teams, typically you don't have like an analyst team and a developer team. You got a bunch of people mixed together, and so you know, what are they going to focus on? What are their goals going to be? So as we think about alignment, before I tell you kind of what happened in this situation, here's the definition of alignment. Addressing both conflict and authority, managing different perspectives, and managing who decides. So Mary Beth O'Neill, if you're not familiar with her, maybe you are, I see some head nodding. She wrote Executive Coaching with Backbone and Heart. And she also does courses. She's got a lot of great material, and I've pulled from some of her material with alignment. She's great at it. So we ask ourselves, how did these two people align, right? Because imagine if they don't have a good relationship and they don't decide to align on these two things, it's going to wreak havoc on all the people below them because they're not making a decision. Fortunately, these two had a great relationship. And it's funny that the woman came back to me, right? She was like, oh my God, he wants to do this. What do you do? And I'm like, well, do they have to be separate things? She was like, no, let's go back and talk. And so they talked, and they decided they actually could merge them, and they kind of understood and worked through that. And it was really cool. And actually they did more than this. So just because this came up, they started realizing they needed a vision and a strategy together. And they were actually going to look at some modernization stuff, which was kind of on his plate, but it wasn't on hers yet. And in fact, even though they did this and it was super cool, the elephant in the room was that some people were not so keen to the whole modernization bit, because some of the product managers on the products that were going to get modernized wanted their customers to get the things that they promised them, right? The things they knew would help. And they knew how to do that in the old system. And maybe they've seen this film before, where modernization often lines itself up in a way where they just do foundational work for 1 sprint, 2 sprints, 1 month, multiple months, and nothing gets delivered. And so this is a big concern for folks. They were not necessarily on board. And so, we just had this great meeting where we know what our mission is. We're all clear on this stuff. Morale is high. Right? So we need to have some steps to create alignment. This is important. Something's on the line, right? When something's on the line, we need to follow this process for alignment. You don't do this for everything. But the process, basically, we need to create collective clarity about what the ask is, what the change is that's coming. 2, we need to acknowledge what are the team's reactions to this, whatever they happen to be. And 3, we need to have a plan for getting commitment, right? We can't just always be, have different perspectives and opinions and not get on the same page at some point. So this first step is for the leader. The leader brings, and in this case, it could be 2 leaders, right? Bring people into the room and describe the decision that's been made and be specific about what it is. And then have the team paraphrase. What did you hear? Right? What are you assuming? Have them say what their assumptions are, because I guarantee you everybody's got assumptions, right? Everyone makes up stories, everyone fills in gaps. They're gonna do that. That's natural, that's human. Okay. The leader needs to then confirm or correct their understanding. So let's clear that up. You know, I understand why you think that, or it sounds like you're saying this. Here's what it actually is instead. Right. So be clear. The goal is for the leader to know that the team understands, right? You have to know they understand. You can't just think they understand. You can't rush through this. You can't just go, we all understand this, right? Yeah, okay, and then end the meeting. That doesn't work. And then the leader should be able to describe anything that the team initially understood. So this is some feedback for the leader. What do they misunderstand? That might help them communicate the next time. Step 2, this could be even harder for the leader. Acknowledge team reactions, right? Open it up. Now, this doesn't give everyone license to say whatever they feel like and be unprofessional, right? Oh, that idea sucks. No, be specific in what your reaction is. If you like it, say what you like about it. If you don't like it, say what you don't like about it, right? Be clear. Don't be judgmental. That's not helpful here, right? You're getting the opportunity to say something important. Make it count. Now, the leader has to paraphrase. Did you actually understand what they said, right? What their reaction was? You can't sit there and correct them, right? So that above the line, below the line, you got to be above the line, right? Be curious about what they're saying. You're not there to correct, to sell, to defend, even if at that moment, your body is getting warm. You might feel it at some spot. You might feel it in your heart racing. You might feel it in your stomach. You might feel it in your head, like a flush of warmth over your head. Like you're going to feel it somewhere. Your body is going to keep score on how you're feeling. But don't let that, right, lead to an immediate reaction. You have to control yourself in those moments. You have to notice that that happens and let it happen. Maybe you need to breathe through that moment, right? So the third thing that needs to happen there is you've got to get to commitment. So I'm reusing fist of 5 or fist to 5, which I actually like a little bit better because it's the range. Where are people on this? How much do you object, if you object at all? And how, if you're on board, how on board are you? Right. So the range helps a lot. It helps with the dialogue. And it helps to know kind of what to block or unblock. So once you kind of get through some of that stuff, you generally have 3 types of objections or reservations that people might have. One would be a cultural hesitation. This feels kind of weird. I don't know. We don't kind of do that. We don't do that around here. If that's the case, the leader has to lead the shift in behavior. Like, I know this is going to be uncomfortable. I know this is going to be hard, right? It's only normal, but we're going to do this, and I'm going to be there with you through this, okay? Second thing is a real threat to success, right? If one of the objections or the reservations to commitment is that, hey, no, there's a real problem that could cause us to fail, then be open to influence and invite others into solving the problem if that's appropriate. Right, so showing that you're open to influence is a little bit of vulnerability, and trust kind of comes out of that. Now, if you have some people that are just stonewalling and they just kind of refuse to let go, you just kind of handle that privately. So that still might happen, right? It's just normal. So really, again, we're testing somebody's resolve. The leader is testing their resolve by going through this process, by not rushing through it, by not sending email about it, right? Like, actually sit with people face to face and deal with this stuff. You are inviting conflict, and you're handling conflict skillfully. And when you have conflict and you handle it skillfully, you grow stronger, not weaker. And so again, you're kind of solidifying and shifting the culture here, right? And as you do this, you're going to increase the leadership quotient. You're going to have more leadership effectiveness and less leadership ineffectiveness with yourself. Maybe you'll be able to influence others, right? But more times where this is handled well than handled poorly. So, in summary, OKRs require change, right? They're designed to focus on what matters most. They're intended to be ambitious. They're most effective when they support a strategy. Ambitious goals require some connection to purpose, right? And engagement for people to have energy and creativity and passion to kind of rally around this thing. Alignment's critical to get everyone in the same direction, so you don't have the hallway conversations of the factions that are for and the factions that are against. And so leaders must meet the challenge. right? They have to accept that they have a role in strategy, no matter how many levels of organizational leadership there happen to be. You play a role, right? They put you in charge of this area for a purpose. What's your idea for strategy? And tend to your people, right? Provide clarity of purpose and connection with each other. This is super important. And then act diligently, right? When you need to, right? Not everything's equally important, but when it is, make sure that you actually gain alignment, right? So you don't have active or passive resistance. And so if you do all this stuff, hopefully you're going to be in this space. So I'm going to give you a couple slides. Each of them has a QR code. So this is a shameless plug for my OKR coaching certification happening on June 6th and 7th. So often what happens with these is people want to go deeper into OKRs. If you do, that's you. If you have a friend, scan that one. These are 3 books on leadership. There are so many. There's Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. I mean, you could just go on and on, right? There's Executive Coaching with Backbone, Heart, so many. And what's cool is once you go down the rabbit hole, you'll notice how they all relate to one another. Super cool stuff if you're interested in this. I'm going to move on to the last one. I want to thank you for your time. Your time is important, right? Your time is valuable. You took time out of your evening to spend it here. And I'm very grateful for that. I would also be grateful if you provide me feedback. It's very short. It only takes a couple minutes. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I invite you to do that. If you don't, that's fine too. And there's my certs, and there's me. So where are we at with time? Who's got questions? Who's got comments? You know, was this useful?
We have a good 30 minutes, Mark. So I
Okay.
open it up to anybody who would like questions. You guys can either just unmute yourselves and ask a question or throw it in the chat.
Yeah, I did see that it was but I was like, this is the life of the time. So anything particularly, any nugget there that you're going to use, or anything you were particularly interested in, or anything you're longing for, like you didn't answer this question? I'm curious about this.
I really enjoyed the alignment and dependencies, because I think that is something that we miss. And aligning on dependencies is helpful. That piece of it, having that conversation, opening that dialogue, I think it's really valuable.
Cool. Courtney asked a really hard question. Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, I mean, look, they're tough conversations. It's about the person, so you do need to respect the person, but you also need to make sure the person respects you and respects the rest of the group. And so you got to kind of find out why they're so strongly objecting to it. Like what is it about this? Like, and you also probably need to kind of double down on, like, here's the importance of this to us. Here's what this means to the organization. Here's what, tell me more about kind of like what's happening for you right now. And it could be something really personal is happening for them, right? There could be something going on in their personal life that you don't know anything about, that they're not going to share in a group setting, but they might share it privately. So if you just kind of like go into it kind of cool, but don't, you don't want to back off of the decision you made, right? And you did the alignment there with the group, but you need to figure out what's going on with this person. Is this person just hating working at the company right now, and they'd be better off in another job? Or they have something going on in their life that's super stressful and it's coming to work with them, and maybe you just empathize with them. It just really depends. I don't know if any of that's useful, Courtney.
Yeah, it is. I appreciate it. It's I think it would be easier if they didn't have good feedback, if they didn't have great concerns. It would be easier to say, let us help you find your next your next gig, right? Or let us help you find what's going to align with your values. But
yeah,
it's valid feedback. It's just something, it's challenges we have to work through, right? Like,
It's very real, right? People get to a place where there's just no way forward. And what's really, you're taking me down a totally different path. I'm just going with it. So what happens for those people is they don't know how to cut the cord. They would be better off if they were and they almost need that to happen somehow, if it gets that bad, okay? If it gets that bad, right? But some kind of wake up call in some way, it's just, it can refresh, right? It can change, it can do wonders for that person specifically. Because if you're not happy, there's a lot of stress you carry around. It's not good for you physically, it's not good for you mentally. There's a lot of challenge there.
yeah, thank you.
Of course. What else? Do we still have people that are not on video? We got 18 participants. Anybody else? A question you have, something you're curious about, something you liked, something you didn't like. I'll take it all. Yeah, very cool. Thank you. And what time is it there, Todd? Oh, that's not bad. That's actually really good. Okay, cool. I don't know KVR. No. I know KPI, but I assume you mean KVI. Yeah, OKR doesn't need to measure customer impact all the time. No, certainly not. With OKRs, they're going to measure what matters most to your area, whatever your mission, your purpose is. This is my thing on strategy too. It's like everybody has something that they're organized around. They have a reason they exist, and that reason is not for themselves; it is for somebody else they serve. And so, mission is okay. Yep. So, mission is really important. My training and then a previous talk that I did, you can Google it if you want, demystifying OKR coaching. I show the difference between KPIs and OKRs, where metrics, some metrics are just health metrics, like am I healthy or not, right? Like my temperature. My temperature is not going to end up in an OKR unless I have chills for a long time, and if I do, I'm probably dead. But like little things like that when a metric is healthy and then becomes unhealthy, I want to know. So there's different kinds of metrics for sure. The average lifespan, do they get stale? Yeah, you gotta throw them away at some point. No. You'll have to decrypt that for me in a second, but let me hit Courtney's question. So lifespan of an OKR. Generally speaking, for me at least, there's three. There's quarterly. At the end of the quarter, it goes away. You don't carry it over the same way you don't carry over stories. And if it's ambitious, the goal isn't to hit 100% of the key results. It's to try to hit maybe 70% or something. So you put this ambitious goal out there because if you focus a lot of time and energy, you paint what's amazing, but you get to what's possible. And so when you've gotten to what's possible, you go, this is good enough. In fact, it was pretty amazing. And so we're done. Now what's most important? The other types would be annual, or you could have multi-year. Now, some people might advocate for not doing time-bound ones, but I find it's hard to do an ambitious goal if you don't bound time. So I like to do that. Lessons learned. Can you be more specific about lessons learned? In what context?
I'm always interested in lessons learned. Some of those biggest takeaways, those are like some of the hardest things we learn, but can be some of the most valuable things.
Okay.
Yeah, so that we don't have to go through that pain. You've been through it. You share that with us.
So I've got good news and bad news. I will offer you some lessons learned. I can almost certainly guarantee you will still have to go through the pain, but at least you have some ideas when the pain comes. So the thing with OKRs is you're going to start either top down or bottom up, or you might start on a project. You're going to start somewhere. And wherever you didn't start, you're going to end up somewhere else. And so often what I've seen is the leaders are, if you start at the lowest level, what happens and what's really cool is the cycle is shorter. So people start to develop habits around it. So it becomes a real thing, right? If you start higher, it's like, yeah, in a year, we're going to talk about this maybe, right? And so going up, then you start to hit leaders, and you start to hit big projects, and you start to hit people that have decided the way this is all going to get laid out and executed. And you start to kind of hit the rub there. And you start to find leaders that either don't have vision or don't have strategy, or extremely tactical focused, other things, may not have good relationships with other leaders, and so can't align. Stuff like that comes up, and you're going to hit it, right? And so when you find those things, you need to develop a relationship with those leaders, right? Have ways to kind of influence them, have ways to respect them, right? And kind of say, hey, look, here's what we're trying to achieve with this stuff, right? But in order to be successful, here's some things we might need to do. What's your reaction to that? What's possible here, right? What would be helpful to you? How can I support you in that? That kind of thing. Is the slide going to be shared? I can, that was a big fail on my part. I actually should have sent that out ahead of time, because if I had lost internet connection, I was going to be in big trouble. So yes, I can send that out. Can that get distributed to the group?
We can do it a couple of different ways. You can share that. I can upload it to Google in a shared space and share out that link. They can connect to you directly, Mark, and you can share it out. It's completely up to you.
I think probably one distribution would be good if I just maybe give it to you. I'm sorry to add more work to your plate,
No,
but
not at
like if you
all.
did that, then you've got the list of people, and if
Yep.
people are interested, great, they take it. If they're not, great, they don't.
Yep. I'll just upload it to a Google space and share out the link.
Cool. What else? Yeah, sure, 100%. Yeah. Y'all ready to take on some of this stuff?
That's a good question, actually, Mark. Like, maybe we're not at that higher level, some of us. How do we broach this subject to get our leaders in this frame of mind?
So my honest opinion on that, with excitement, enthusiasm, right? Like with a real passion and joy, you say, hey, we have learned, like whatever forum you can find where you think people would just naturally show up. Here's this amazing thing, that we think would be really helpful. And you just kind of share it with them. Hey, look, I know we're already doing OKRs. Here's what some people in the field are saying are really helpful to leaders when they're doing OKRs. And then you don't put a lot of pressure on them. Like, you don't have to go do these things, but you're now offering potential solutions, right, to challenges they might have. And just kind of lay it out there. What's your reaction to this? What do you want to do with this stuff? Any curiosity or interest in it?
Awesome.
Yeah, me too. Steve's got a question. Moving the Needle with Lean OKRs. I don't actually know that book. Man, there's more and more books all the time. And so I'm sorry, that's a lame response. It's funny, a colleague I had, like, I worked with them for like 2 years. She kept telling me, write a book. I'm like, I don't know if I want to write a book. That's a big commitment. Here to share. Yeah, so can you post that link? Who's the book by? I'm just curious. Here, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And that way, if I need to go see something. Also, even though I know we have till 8:30, but if people don't want to stay, you don't need to stay. you know, and I don't know if there's things to announce at the end or whatnot. I'm kind of curious about the book though.
Oh, thank you, Courtney. Yeah, people don't need to stay. You know, we just like to leave this open. So if you have any questions, maybe there's
Oh yeah.
don't feel comfortable sharing here, but you have Mark's information through those QR codes, and you can reach out to him. And then Nicole is sharing that Daniel will be speaking at the SIM conference and an upcoming Lean Coffee opportunity to bring any kind of discussions you guys want to talk about.
Steve, now that I pulled this up, I am familiar with him some, just because there was a period of time where I was kind of going and looking at kind of who was talking about this stuff out there. I don't know deeply kind of like what his perspective on all these things are, so it's kind of hard to say if our stuff's compatible or not. But he seemed to know stuff.
Sure, thanks.
Well,
I don't know if
that's
there's anything in particular that stood out to you.
Steve, are you speaking? Because we can't hear you.
No, I wasn't, but when Mark asked a question just now, my audio cut out and I didn't hear if he was talking to me.
Yeah, I mean, quick, like, are you pretty deep into the book?
About a fourth of the way through, so just
Okay.
kind of started last week.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if anything in particular stood out that you were curious about or found interesting.
Well, before I hadn't really understood. I'm new to all this stuff. Just heard of them, and I hadn't really understood the difference between OKRs and KPIs, and now I think I at least get that. The KPIs are more tactical or health metrics, like you said. And OKRs are strategic.
Yeah, generally yes. Generally yes. I mean, because you have to have a way of distinguishing metrics, right? There's got to be a way. And some tools actually provide both, right? They provide KPIs and OKRs. Hope had a question. Where did the number of OKRs one team should land? Oh yeah. There's only one answer to this. It depends. so what would it depend on? Okay. Sometimes, let's see. If two teams really kind of, imagine two teams working out of a common backlog, would they pull off separate features, right, and focus on those for a quarter? Would they actually have different focuses? If they have different focuses, even if they pull from one backlog, then they probably have different OKRs. If one heavily depends on the other, it may be awkward. You might start with them having their own or ask them, right? They may enjoy having their own. Start there. And if it's really hard and really awkward, and you're like, those aren't good measures, and that's not really, and we can't do it without these other people, and you realize you're going to be working in the same cadence, you might actually kind of go, hey, should we just have a shared goal? And I also find that useful in the big room planning stuff to have kind of those OKRs show up there that people can tie up to. And then the question is, if you're doing that in that big room, do you actually need all teams to have their own? I might start there. If I was doing a big room planning, I might actually start above the team level and then go the reverse way and say, where is this not working for you? Where do you not see yourself? Where are there things you need to provide leading indicators that aren't showing up here? I don't know if that guidance is helpful at all.
Yeah, that is helpful. We used to do that big team meeting and I really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna actually try to bring that back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it could be super effective, right? Because you get into all the details of things. Yeah, good question. What else?
One of my takeaways from that book is that they should be about changing behavior, not just, other kinds of metrics, but to reach it, it should require people, either your own internal people or your customers, to change their behavior in some way. Does that line up with kind of what you think?
So it kind of depends where you tie things, right? So I believe there's a if you are in product management or your teams that are product teams, but potentially even higher than that, there is the need to serve your customers, and there are questions around what's your roadmap look like? What is your product strategy? There's all these tools that you can use, like the value. Anyone familiar with the value proposition canvas, or I forget what the other ones are called. There's Strategizer is a company, and there's other things that are like this, but there's all these great product tools where you're thinking about your customers and kind of their pains, their gains, and you do talk a lot about what's the future look like for them, and what the future looks like for them is what are they doing in the future that's different than what they're doing today. And so there is a natural tie, if you're already in that space, to OKRs and using them to kind of measure the behavioral changes. So I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if every OKR would necessarily go that way, though, because if you have like deeply technical ones, it might be the behavior of a system instead of a person, or something to that effect. Yeah, sounds like a good book. Yeah, so I'll just tell you this, and then I'll be quiet, and then we'll see what happens with the silence. When I kind of learned about OKRs, I thought they were the best things to slice bread, and I felt like I had some wasted years of Agile coaching without them, because while Scrum has sprint goals, they're so poorly used, or they're either underused or they're misused. And the goal setting really can galvanize groups and organizations, and everybody can sort of relate to it. And doing that, there's just so much like positivity and energy that this stuff, if you're not already using it, definitely look into pockets where it might be useful.
Well, I don't want to cut anybody off here. But I also don't want to, I want people to be able to join their families and carry on with their evenings as well. Really appreciate everybody being here. Wonderful questions, great synergy here. Again, you have Mark's information, you have Agile Boulder's information. I will be sending out slides here in a bit, and thank you so much. You have ways of following up.
Yeah, best of luck to everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. And good evening. Bye.
Bye.